Today, I'm reviewing Vietnam Airlines economy class on a 12.5-hour flight from Hanoi to London in their long-haul Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Vietnam Airlines are a confusing airline to rate with some really impressive highlights, followed by some really disappointing negatives. So in this video, I'll explore both the good and the bad to help you decide if Vietnam Airlines are worth flying with. We start off at Hanoi's Noi Bai Airport International Terminal, a decent enough terminal which mostly caters to Vietnam Airlines. Plus, there were hardly any queues at bag drop and we'd already checked in online, but despite that, for a group of 5 of us, it took about 25 minutes to check our bags in, as the check-in agent spent most of her time just staring at the screen doing nothing. After that, you pass through immigration, which took about 20 minutes, then security, which was actually quite efficient, though you do have to take your shoes off. Once through to the departure area, you'll find there isn't really much to do besides look out the window, as the whole terminal is just a long line with a few duty-free and gift shops and not much else. They do have a Popeye's chicken though, and the Wi-Fi is okay. Now, Vietnam Airlines. This is actually my 5th time flying them, but the first time flying long haul, and also my first time in their Boeing 787. And I generally find them to be a decent, slightly quirky airline, but prone to delays and the planes are a bit shabby. But whilst the cabins look a bit drab, I actually think they have some of the comfiest seats of any airline, thanks to the really thick cushions and good legroom. Their planes also have one of my favourite liveries of all time, so generally speaking, I view Vietnam Airlines positively. And I'll give a few more examples of why I like them later in the video. For now though, here's our aircraft for today's flight, a 10-year-old Boeing 787-9 with 274 seats in total, 28 in business, 35 in premium, and 211 in economy. Vietnam Airlines have 17 787s in their fleet, plus 14 Airbus A350s and a whole load of Airbus A321s, and they've just ordered 50 Boeing 737 MAXs to make Donald Trump happy, so overall they have a very modern fleet. Boarding was pretty much on time, but before we step on board, here are the stats and route map for today's flight. And we departed just a few minutes late, but worth mentioning, Vietnam Airlines do frequently fly over Russia on this route, since they don't have the same restrictions as Western airlines. But the day before this flight there was a big strike in Moscow, so I think they opted to completely avoid Russia, making the flight about 45 minutes longer than usual. Here's what premium economy looks like, and whilst looking a bit dated, I can confirm the seats are extremely comfortable after flying it from Saigon to Hanoi a few days earlier. So subscribe if you want to be notified when that video gets released. And here's my seat, 26k, an exit row seat which costs an extra £90 to reserve. Maybe not so representative of the average economy seat, but I still think it's worth splurging a bit for the comfort on such a long flight. The legroom in the exit row is obviously great, though worth noting the regular seats are also decent with an above average 32 inches of seat pitch and decent recline, and the seats are very comfy thanks to thick padding, so above average I would say. Headphones are waiting at the seat with disposable ear pads handed out separately, good hygiene. They have individual air vents, which a lot of airlines are actually removing these days, so that's a positive, and just a regular fleece blanket and quite a soft pillow. Also, best of all, I actually had a window on this flight, which if you've seen the video I released before this of EVA Air, I made the mistake of choosing a windowless seat, and of course there's an adjustable headrest too. So overall, a slightly above average seat, if a bit on the dated side. As we started pushing back, the safety video started playing, or at least I thought it was, but it turned out to be an elaborate advert for an industrial steel company. And if you're wondering why the seat suddenly changed, it's because I filmed this on a flight a few days earlier from Saigon to Hanoi in premium economy, since I had to keep my TV down in the exit row seat, but the content is exactly the same. Now here's the safety video, quite nice and lots of cultural things in there. It definitely serves as a good tourism advert for Vietnam, which I appreciate in a safety video.
Do not remove the live check-in from its location without cabin crew's requirement. Thank you very much for your attention, and we wish you a pleasant flight.
And now the takeoff coming up next. Now that we're in the air, here's a quick look at the IV system. Actually quite good, with a lot of new movies from all over the world. But weirdly, they have a Wi-Fi QR code, but this plane had no Wi-Fi at all, so not sure why that's there. I spent the flight watching random Vietnamese movies, some of which were actually pretty good. There's a good moving map, and the screen is a good size and responsive. And they even have a section where you can read all the stats about every aircraft in their fleet. Shortly after takeoff, service starts, and surprisingly, it starts off with a hot towel and nuts. Two things a lot of airlines just don't bother with these days, though some were wasabi flavoured, and if there's one thing you should know about Freddy's flight reviews, it's that I don't like wasabi. Right before serving food, they hand out a menu so you can choose what you want, and generally speaking, there's one Asian option and one Western option. Here I got the Asian option, and it was just average. Pork and rice with some vegetables. The pork was a bit chewy, and the sauce pretty bland. Then a prawn salad on the side, actually pretty good as the veg was slightly pickled like what you'd find in a banh mi. And dessert was this gloopy thing I'm guessing was some sort of chair, made of coconut milk, some sort of jelly and corn. It tasted better than it looked. Then on the side, warm bread and soft butter, a mug for the post-meal tea or coffee service, wooden cutlery, a wet wipe and a toothpick. Overall, this pretty much lands bang in the middle when it comes to airline meals. But the main meal just wasn't very good, so I would give it a 6 out of 10. The Western option also didn't look great, as you'll see in the second meal, but worth noting you do get a little cake with that. One thing I do like about Vietnam Airlines though is that you can pre-order bubble tea or pizza for actually a very reasonable price. I got this bubble tea for 50,000 Vietnam dong, or about £1.50. And you can order a pizza like this for 100,000 or £3, which I did on my previous flight. And they give everyone a big bottle of water for free. Again, something many airlines just don't bother do these days. But then we immediately have another thing that highlights Vietnam Airlines' inconsistency. In the loos, they provide both toothbrushes and shaving kits, which is good, but every toilet I went to had some sort of defect. One had a seat which didn't stand up properly, another had a broken flush button, and on an earlier flight my wife took, 2 of the toilets were just out of service for the entire 12-hour flight. But hey, here's another hot towel to brighten the mood. The second meal was served, slightly surprisingly, halfway into the flight, and this time it was fish and rice, quite tasty but hardly any sauce, so ended up being a bit bland again. I think the starter had chicken in it, and again the same dessert, this time with longan fruit and nuts instead of corn. And just for comparison, this was the Western option, beef stroganoff with spaghetti. My wife said it was okay, and the cake was quite nice. So again, another fine meal service, but it would have been nice if they didn't serve the same dessert twice. Also, a few hours later, we ordered some pot noodles, which is something you can do with Vietnam Airlines if you're hungry, so I recommend it. But after ordering, the flight attendant just never brought it to us. Not sure if he forgot or was just being lazy, but the same thing happened on my wife's previous flight, where she had to repeatedly ask for water during the meal service before being served, so it doesn't seem like a one-off. Now as we descended into London, a few more adverts started playing. First, a spicy sauce brand, which makes sense, but then this one was for another steel-making company called Hoa Phat, which really makes me ponder why all these Vietnamese industrial steel makers are advertising on a plane. Like, who's the target audience there? Anyway, despite typically cloudy weather in London, we got a very nice view of the city centre coming into land, so here's a bit of that, and no crying baby this time, just the sound of the engines. And here we are in Heathrow Terminal 4. And I know I've complained a lot during this video, but I do still like Vietnam Airlines quite a lot and will certainly fly them again. The price is usually pretty competitive, the seats are comfy, the food is fine, and the crew are friendly, if a bit inattentive when it comes to anything that isn't a regular meal service. Also, a lot of their aircraft cabins are in desperate need of a refresh as many seats and toilets are broken. And honestly, since we're in London, I would say they're a very similar airline quality-wise to British Airways, who I also love to hate. This flight ended up costing £390 for a one-way ticket, which isn't bad since I didn't book a return, and I'll give them a very precise 63.75 rating out of 100. And on my airline tier list, they'll keep their 7 out of 10 rating, same rank as British Airways, as even though this flight was probably a 6 out of 10, I've had other better flights with them, so I don't really want to reduce their overall score. Now if you're looking for something else to watch, then you can check out the flight I took before this, a flight with EVA Air from London to Bangkok in their Boeing 777 economy class. A very good flight as shown by their new 9 out of 10 ranking on my airline tier list, and I'll also have reviews of Vietnam Airlines Premium Economy, the Raffles Hotel Siem Reap, and Bangkok Airways in the coming weeks to name a few. So be sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date with that, leave a comment if you enjoyed, thanks for watching and goodbye.